ever get that feeling like there's this one like key idea out there that would like unlock this whole new way of understanding how the world works?
Yeah.
But then you kind of dive in.
Yeah.
And it's just like this tidal wave of jargon and complexity. Yeah.
Wow.
And you're like,
where do I even begin?
Exactly. You're not alone.
Nope.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Absolutely.
Think of us as your like expert guides. We're sifting through,
cutting through the noise,
all that dense, confusing stuff.
That's right.
To bring you the genuinely interesting bits.
The good stuff.
The stuff that makes you go, aha.
Uh-huh.
But without giving you a headache.
Without the headache. That's the key.
Exactly.
We try to make it painless.
So, today,
yeah,
you've asked us to explore Bittensor.
Bittensor, yeah. It's a fascinating project.
It's one that's been generating a lot of buzz.
A lot of buzz indeed.
So we've dug in.
Yeah, we have.
We've taken a look at a collection of articles.
Went deep.
A pretty detailed research paper. Even a YouTube documentary.
Oh, yeah. The documentary was really interesting.
Yeah. And we've tried to distill it down into what we think are the core insights you need.
Yeah, the nuggets.
To really grasp what's going on.
That's it.
So our goal today is simple.
Keep it simple.
To give you a clear picture of what Bittensor is all about.
How it works.
How it functions.
The why it matters.
Yeah, why it might be a big deal.
Potentially a big deal.
To you.
To all of us, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, let's jump right in.
Okay, let's do it.
With an idea.
Okay.
That, that really kind of laid some groundwork.
Right.
For understanding Bittensor's approach.
Interesting.
One of our sources dug up this quote from Nick Land.
Oh, yeah.
From way back in the 90s.
Way back.
Talking about this fundamental shift.
Okay.
From top-down, centralized control.
Right.
Towards these more bottom-up, interconnected systems.
It's a recurring theme, it seems.
And he saw this playing out in everything. Like societies.
Of course.
Companies.
Theater.
Computers.
Yeah, even technology itself.
Right.
It's fascinating.
So it's particularly striking.
What's striking?
Is how the evolution of AI has followed this exact same pattern.
That's interesting.
So like early AI efforts involved humans directly coding in knowledge, which is very much a top-down approach.
You're telling the machine what to think.
Exactly.
Right.
Now with deep learning,
things have changed.
We're kind of flipping the script.
Yeah.
We define the goal.
Give it a target.
And then we let the AI learn and adapt its own internal settings.
It figures out the how.
To find the best way to achieve that goal.
Emergent behavior.
Yeah, so it's this bottom-up emergent process.
Absolutely.
Where the AI is essentially
exploring.
Yeah, exploring this vast landscape of possibilities.
It's like a search algorithm.
Yeah.
But on a grander scale.
To find the optimal configuration.
Finding the best way to do things.
So it's like instead of telling a plant how to grow leaf by leaf.
Micromanaging nature.
Exactly. You just give it sunlight and water.
The basic ingredients.
And let it figure out the best way to thrive.
Let it do its thing.
Yeah.
Trust the process.
And this principle of adaptive search.
Okay.
Of like putting energy into a system with a clear objective.
Give it a goal.
But without micromanaging the details.
Let it find its own way.
Often leads to...
And they're surprisingly effective.
Yeah, these surprisingly effective solutions.
Sometimes the best solutions are the ones we don't directly control.
Right.
It's counterintuitive, but it works.
And Bittensor takes this core idea of bottom-up adaptive search, and it applies it not just to algorithms.
How AI algorithms work.
Right.
But to the very design of economic incentives.
Interesting.
Within a computer network.
Okay.
So the aim is to create...
The goal is openly programmable economic rules.
Okay.
That can themselves adapt.
So the rules themselves can evolve.
And evolve to achieve a desired outcome.
That's pretty powerful.
Right.
If you can get it right.
And given that like markets are naturally distributed and that function through networks.
They are networks, essentially.
Yeah. A decentralized protocol becomes this like logical foundation for this.
It makes sense.
Yeah. So... Which neatly brings us to Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Okay.
Now, you might be wondering.
Yeah, I'm sure some people are.
What's the connection?
What's the link?
Between cryptocurrency.
Right.
And, like, cutting-edge AI.
It's not immediately obvious.
Right. Well, one of our sources makes this really compelling point.
Okay.
Calling Bitcoin a peer-to-peer market for processing power.
Processing power. Okay.
For hashes.
For hashes, right? The computational work that secures the Bitcoin network.
And it's currently the largest amount
largest.
Just a parallel computation happening anywhere.
All driven by this system of rewards.
Right. All driven by this system of distributed automated rewards.
Which is pretty remarkable when you think about it.
So if we look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, zoom out a bit.
Bitcoin's design.
Okay.
Where resources are automatically distributed as a reward for contributing to a specific goal.
Which is?
Securing the network.
Securing the network, right?
Has created this remarkably resilient and efficient market.
It's been surprisingly effective.
Even though the raw processing power itself might not have inherent value.
Outside of Bitcoin.
Outside of Bitcoin.
Not really.
Its production is what keeps the whole system secure.
It's the backbone.
Right.
It's what makes it all work.
And crucially attracts financial investment.
That's the key.
That's what drives it.
Right. So this cycle of incentives, connecting those who secure the network,
the miners,
and those who hold the currency,
the investors,
is fundamental to Bitcoin's success. It's a symbiotic relationship.
So Bittensor steps in as this kind of next level concept.
Building on that foundation.
Built on this core idea of programmatic incentive.
Yeah. Taking it further.
But instead of just one fixed incentive structure.
Like Bitcoin.
Like Bitcoin's for securing its ledger.
Right.
Bittensor aims to create a framework.
A more general framework.
Where many different incentive structures. Called subnets.
Got it.
Can operate simultaneously.
Interesting.
So each of these subnets can have its own unique programmable goals.
So like different markets.
And its own internal economy.
Each with its own rules.
All tied together. By the protocol's main stake.
Which is represented by?
Which is represented by the TAO token.
TAO. Okay.
So think of it like a platform.
A platform for markets.
Where lots of different specialized markets can run.
Each with its own purpose?
Each with its own rules.
And its own token economy.
Now, this naturally leads to a really important question.
A crucial question.
If the amount of stake you have influences how rewards are distributed, what's to prevent?
Yeah, what's stopping?
Those with a lot of stake from simply favoring themselves.
Yeah, just rigging the game in their favor.
That's the challenge.
That's the big challenge.
Of subjective stake weighting.
It's the potential for...
The potential for this self-serving loop.
Where the rich get richer.
Where the powerful get more powerful.
At the expense of everyone else.
Potentially at the expense of the overall system.
It's like the referee also being the star player.
Yeah.
Not very fair.
And Bittensor's proposed solution. To this challenge of aligning incentives.
Aligning incentives across the whole network.
Across the whole network is something called UMA consensus.
UMA consensus or YC?
YC.
Got it.
It's designed to allow for agreement.
Agreement on what?
On information.
Okay.
In a way that can scale.
Scale to a lot of people.
To a massive number of participants. Yeah. Even if some of them are trying to game the system.
Even with bad actors.
So imagine it as a way to get a reliable sense of the truth. Based on a collection of different signals.
Like a wisdom of the crowd kind of thing.
Yeah.
But more robust.
Even if some of those signals are noisy.
Or intentionally misleading.
Or intentionally misleading, right?
Or to throw you off.
So it takes these local opinions. Represented by these weights. And turns them into a global consensus.
Across the network.
Across the network.
So it aggregates individual beliefs.
Exactly.
Into a kind of shared understanding.
What's ingenious about YC?
What's ingenious?
Is that it operates on the assumption. That the majority of the stake is held by honest participants.
Okay, so it assumes good intentions.
While acknowledging.
But it also acknowledges.
That there might be a dishonest minority.
That there will be some bad actors.
Right. So it dynamically works.
It's not static.
To stabilize incentives. Towards this like healthy equilibrium.
Finding that balance.
So consensus weight. Is determined by finding the highest weight.
The highest weight?
That at least the majority of the stake.
At least the majority agrees on.
So it's like a threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any weights that are set above this level.
Above the threshold.
Are automatically pulled back down.
So they're kind of reined in.
While lower weights held by the minority effectively don't have enough influence.
They don't have enough power.
To sway the consensus.
They're outweighed.
Right.
Interesting.
And the reward system
good.
Is tied directly to how much stake is in agreement with this consensus.
So the more you agree.
The more your stake aligns with the majority view.
The more you get rewarded.
The more rewards you receive.
Interesting.
The consensus is weak. Those who help to strengthen it.
By aligning their stake.
Get a bigger boost. They get incentivized to bring everyone together.
while being out of sync with the majority, becomes increasingly costly.
So there's a penalty for going against the grain.
Yeah. So this creates this really powerful built-in pressure.
To be honest.
For everyone to be honest.
Because honesty is rewarded.
Because overall alignment becomes the most profitable path.
For the individual.
For individual stakeholders.
That's clever.
Now, crucially, UMA consensus is what we call substrate agnostic.
Meaning
it doesn't care about the specifics.
It doesn't care about
of what's being measured.
The content.
Or how it's being measured.
And the method.
It only looks at
the final numbers.
The final numerical weightings and the amount of stake behind them.
So it's purely about stake and weight.
Yeah, so this separation of the underlying computation from the protocol itself
is key.
Because it gives those who are validating information.
The validators.
A huge amount of freedom.
To choose their tools.
To use whatever programming languages.
Whatever method.
Or computing systems.
They think are best
suited for the task at hand.
It's like a universal scoring system.
Yeah.
That works for any sport. Right. You don't need to change the rules for every game.
Exactly.
It's adaptable.
So picture Bittensor.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
As this massive peer-to-peer economic computer.
Okay. A computer made of people.
That's specifically designed to run these incentive-driven applications in parallel.
All at the same time.
So it's this self-regulating system.
And regulating how?
That's constantly adjusting.
It's a dynamic.
Yeah, it's internal dynamics.
Okay.
To achieve its goals.
To reach its targets.
And in turn, adapt those goals.
It's
based on the desires of its stakeholders.
The people involved.
Right.
It's responsive to its users.
And the TAO token. Acts as this
bridge.
This open access container of economic energy.
Connecting the inside and the outside.
That connects the internal workings of the Bittensor network.
To
the outside world.
To the real world.
So holding TAO.
Is like.
Represents this vested interest. In the protocol's success.
In its future.
A share in its current capabilities and its future potential.
You're betting on its potential.
To discover valuable solutions.
It's like owning a piece of this evolving machine.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
The way this economic model is structured has some fascinating parallels. With how machine learning itself works.
Oh, that's interesting.
So you have this continuous back and forth between those who are designing the incentives.
The subnet creators.
Yeah, the subnet creators and those who are participating and earning rewards.
The miners. Okay.
And this mirrors
the relationship between
a machine learning model's architecture,
the structure of
the model, and the optimization algorithm
that help it learn. Okay, so they're both kind of searching.
Both are constantly exploring this complex space
to find
the most effective configuration.
The best way to do things.
One of our sources even describes the higher level behavior.
The overall behavior.
Of this system. To use a torus.
Okay.
It's this kind of continuous self-folding flow. That's constantly adapting its path.
It's always changing.
Much like a neural network evolving.
So it's like a living system.
Now, with all these different subnets operating
at the same time,
there needs to be a mechanism.
A way to
distributing the newly created TAO.
The new TAO.
The protocol's emissions.
The emissions, okay.
Bittensor has this root subnet for this purpose.
The root subnet, okay.
The distribution of these emissions is guided by
a
slightly older version of UMA consensus.
An earlier version.
Where stake plays a role.
Stake is still important.
In assigning weights.
In determining the weights.
So essentially it's this higher level consensus.
The consensus about consensus.
That directs the flow of TAO.
Okay.
Across all the YC instances.
In the subnets below? Interesting.
So what you end up with...
Is this really interesting?
Market of markets. Markets all the way down.
Right, so miners are competing
for...
within individual subnets. For the rewards offered there.
Local reward.
And then the subnets themselves are, in a way...
competing on another level.
Competing for the overall protocol emission.
With the global reward.
And to make things even more dynamic. And prevent any one subnet from becoming too dominant.
To keep things balanced.
There's this proposal called Dynamic TAO.
Okay. The idea is
to make subnets themselves. Tradable using
TAO.
So you can buy and sell subnets.
Allowing an open market.
The market decides.
To determine their value.
Their worth.
And by extension.
The amount
of emissions they receive.
How much TAO they get.
So this opens up.
The
pricing of these specialized markets.
To everyone. It's democratizing access.
And creates opportunities.
For those
who can spot.
Undervalued
or high potential subnets.
It's like stock picking, but for subnets.
What's also really clever.
What's it clever?
Is that UMA consensus can be layered.
How? So
weights can be used?
Weights can be used
to weigh other weights.
The weights all the way down.
Creating hierarchical levels
of
prediction and agreement.
So it's like a multi-level consensus system.
Yeah, so this allows for
tackling
really complex problems.
By breaking them down.
Into
multiple layers.
Multiple layers of these parallel YC instances.
So you have these YC instances.
Working together.
In a hierarchy.
And importantly, the underlying stake is still global.
It's all connected.
Participating at every level.
So your stake is working on multiple levels.
Right, so this opens the door.
For
even more sophisticated ways.
Of
reaching consensus in the future.
Interesting.
Potentially even systems. Where your influence in the consensus.
The influence is based on.
Is based not just on how much stake you have.
No, it's just stake.
But also on your track record. Of making accurate predictions.
So reputation matters too.
So it's like
a system that learns
who to trust.
Who's reliable.
Based on past performance.
That's a powerful concept.
Another fascinating aspect. Is how Bittensor separates who owns the stake.
Like ownership.
From who gets to actively participate in the development and business opportunities. Within the network.
Okay, so there's a separation between.
Yeah, so stakeholders can delegate their stake.
To
validators. Who then use that stake to set weights.
To participate in the consensus.
And access resources.
On behalf of the delegator.
Okay,
so they're like representatives.
In return, validators currently take a portion of the rewards.
A cut of the rewards.
Around 18%.
18%, okay.
So this creates
an interesting dynamic.
This really interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Where someone with a great idea, but not a lot of initial capital,
not a lot of TAO,
can potentially attract stake delegation.
Convince people to trust them.
By convincing others of their vision.
It's like crowdfunding.
Yeah.
But with stake.
They can then use the resources of the network.
To build something.
To build valuable services or products.
And share the profit.
Share some of the profits with their delegators.
So everyone benefits.
And bootstrap their own growth within the ecosystem.
It's a way to get started.
So you don't necessarily need to be a whale.
With tons of TAO.
To
make a difference.
To build something meaningful on Bittensor.
That's good. It lowers the barrier to entry.
Of course,
yeah.
As our sources point out,
of course,
designing these incentive systems
is hard.
Is incredibly difficult.
Very hard.
Especially in an environment.
An environment
where anyone can participate.
Open to everyone.
And some might be trying to exploit the system.
There will always be bad actors.
Right. So the goal is to create.
A
set of rules. Where everyone acting in their own best interest.
Self-interest.
Ultimately leads to the best outcome.
For everyone.
For the network as a whole.
For the collective.
To minimize that conflict.
The conflict between
what's good for the individual.
And what's good for the group.
And what's good for the collective.
Yeah, aligning those incentives.
A prime example. Of the kind of emergent behavior this can lead to. Is in peer-to-peer intelligence markets. Which is where Bittensor first started.
That's where it began.
So in these markets, only the final output.
The end result.
Like the answer to a question, for example.
Okay.
Is measured.
It's all about the output.
Without any requirements.
No, babe.
About
how you got there.
How that answer was generated.
Doesn't matter.
So this allows for. This incredible diversity of approaches.
Different methods.
So someone could be using.
Yeah.
A state-of-the-art AI model.
The latest AI.
A team of human experts.
Good old-fashioned human intelligence.
Or even a combination of both.
The hybrid approach.
And the market itself determines.
The market decides.
What works best based on the quality of the output.
It's a meritocracy.
And because the participants in these markets are often anonymous.
They're anonymous.
Simply providing outputs.
Just giving the answer.
It means that even individuals or organizations with significant proprietary AI technology.
Technology they don't want to reveal.
That they can't publicly reveal.
Right.
Could still potentially monetize it within relevant subnet.
They can still profit from it.
While keeping their methods secret.
Their secret sauce stays secret.
The outputs themselves can be filtered.
Filtered to?
Locally to remove any sensitive information.
To protect their IP.
So this could make Bittensor.
This could make Bittensor a early indicator.
Early indicator of
advancements in AI.
Major advancements in AI.
Yeah, you could see breakthroughs happening.
Because you'd see the outputs improving.
Without knowing how they're doing it.
Right.
That's fascinating.
Furthermore, the process of validating the outputs
in these subnets.
Yeah. Can itself evolve into a sophisticated stack of AI systems.
AI validating AI.
So these the validators could
even provide feedback.
Feedback to
training signals.
Back to the miners. Creating a loop.
Creating this continuous loop of improvement.
They're teaching each other.
Right.
That's really interesting.
And the vast amounts of data.
All that data.
Generated across the network.
Could be used to
further refine and train
AI models
recursively.
So the system is constantly learning.
Validators could also implement intelligent routing mechanisms. Almost like this decentralized switchboard.
Oh, a switchboard?
For direct requests.
To the right miner?
To the miners or teams of miners.
Yeah.
Best equipped to handle them.
So it's optimizing the allocation of tasks.
Right.
Matching the right problem with the right solver.
The potential
for
different markets within Bittensor to work together
is huge.
Is also really powerful.
It's like an ecosystem.
So the output from one specialized subnet
could become the input for another.
They feed into each other.
Imagine having dedicated subnets.
Subnets.
For things like computing power. Data storage. Data processing. AI model training. And inference.
Right.
All operating in parallel.
At the same time.
And feeding into each other.
Collaborating.
In these flexible bottom-up structures.
It's a dynamic system.
So the system could dynamically adapt.
Adapt to new challenges.
And complement its own capabilities on the fly.
It's self-improving.
And because the code for these subnets is open source.
Open source, that's key.
It fosters what one of our sources calls
radically free.
Open source competition.
Open source competition.
Through the process of forking.
Forking meaning?
So, if a particular subnet isn't performing well.
If it's not working.
Or its validation mechanisms are weak.
It's vulnerable.
Anyone can step in.
Anyone can.
And try to create a better version.
A better subnet.
Potentially attracting miners.
By offering better rewards.
By offering more attractive rewards.
Expert.